So it's no surprise that I'm a big fan, a huge fan of Mayor Beth Van Duyne. If you guys haven't been following it, they've thrown everything they can at Beth Van Duyne. And she stood there, she stood her ground, and she just keeps on coming because she knows what's right. And I wish that was a common attribute, but it's very, very rare. And she has it in spades. I don't know where she got it, but she's got it, and thank God for that she does. If you, as you all may know, she has been the mayor of Irving since 2011. Is that right? Yeah, 2011. She's been on city council since 2004, and has been the center of controversy pretty much her entire time as mayor. And it's because she's been doing the right things. And the establishment, the politically correct media, they don't like it when you do the right thing, and they'll do everything they can to take you down. So she knows a lot about being in the arena. She knows a lot about being in the crucible. She's been standing up against the Islamo bullies that we're all familiar with, and she just keeps standing her ground. So I know y'all are here to hear her, but I just really wanted to let y'all know why I am so excited to hear from her, and why we should all be encouraging her. We need to remember those folks that are in there fighting. We need to encourage them. They don't know that we're with them. We need to tell them, and we need to remind them, and we need to always let them know. And when you see somebody attacking them, you need to get in there and stand with them, and not just let them take all the arrows and the slings. So, without further ado, I hope you'll give a warm round of applause and welcome Mayor Beth Van Duyne.
I don't know that I've ever been compared to David before, but that was quite an introduction. You asked me where I got it from. Anybody in here actually know my mom? I know you do. Okay. You know my mom too? Okay, I am merely the acorn. All right, she is the oak. She's a little woman, but you would never know it when you hear her speak. And I tell a story when I was 17. I did not think I was a hellion. And I really wasn't. I remember I had gotten in late, and we had moved from upstate New York, so I am a New Yorker, and I still got elected mayor in Texas. That was breaking rule number 1. But we moved down here when I was 17. Now, I had come from an all-girls boarding school in upstate New York. And I don't know, does anybody in here actually speak Chinese? I've been told that the symbol in Chinese for war is 2 women under the same roof. So imagine a 15-year-old coming back from boarding school thinking she's, I've had a little bit of independence, moving to Texas, and then having to move back in. It was difficult. I have a 17-year-old daughter. Let me tell you, it was difficult. There was one time I came home late, and she was not happy. I say it was 15 minutes late. She says it was 30 minutes late. We'll see somewhere in the middle. And I got grounded, and grounded not for a day, not for a weekend, but for 3 months. And I was really angry, and she was going on and on. And finally, I got mad, and I said, okay, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't go out, I don't commit crime. What do you want from me? And she looks at me and she goes, oh, you're not a criminal, you want a cookie? Now, she actually put a different word in there, well, you're not a blank criminal, you want a cookie. And I looked at, being in office, being mayor, is so similar to that. Okay, I'm not a criminal. No, what do you want? I'm an elected official. And what I said is, we are sometimes, as elected officials, we're that daughter, okay? You might be doing okay things, but you really are, our constituents are the parents. And you need to continue to push us for more. We can never just sit on our laurels and say, okay, we've done enough. You can't do that. You have to continuously push and push and push for more and better, knowing that your level of expectation will probably be met. Think about that for a minute. What is our level of expectation when we think about elected officials or politicians? Really? I mean, somebody answer that. No, it's not much. It's not much at all. I mean, look who can get elected. And you look at it, you're like, really? This is the best we got? You know, okay, give me some words. Throw some words out when we think of politician that you think of.
Honesty.
Oh, come on.
Whiny.
Whiny. What else? Corrupt, right? Let me help you get you started. What else?
Self-serving.
What?
Self-serving.
Self-serving. Entitled. Special interest groups. Okay, that's enough. Kind of hurts now. But you know, you hear that, and are we really that surprised when that's what we get?
That's right.
Now, what could help that? Having much better people run.
Amen.
I have been begging in Elena. I mean, I'll look at you, Morgan. I mean, we really try to get people to run for election. And then they look at the beating that we take in the paper, the beating that we take everywhere, and they're like, why do I want to do this? You know, at 6 o'clock at night, I'd rather go home with my family, or I'd rather go out to the movies, or I'd rather just do anything, pick up a book, than have to go out and face a public that hates you. Now, why do they hate you? Because typically you're doing the wrong stuff. You're not listening to them. You think you're above. When I ran for election in 2004, my opponent was at a debate, and he said, you know, when you're an elected official, you think you're up here, right? And then you're no longer an elected official, and you get down here, and you realize, you know, that you are doing a lot. And I looked at him, and I said, you know, my take on that was the exact opposite. As an elected official, I am down here. You know, the city of Irving is one of the 100 largest cities in the country. I think we're 92nd now. We've got 235,000 people. You know what that means? Anybody seen Office Space? I've got 235,000 bosses. You know, 235,000 people that tell me what to do, and that does not include the 9,000 businesses or the 250,000 regular employees that we have there every day. And all of those people tell me what to do and how to do it. And you know what? It's my job to listen. It's not my job to always agree, but it's my job to listen. And I have walked into some of the biggest lions' dens in my city, well, actually across the country. You know, because if you are confident in your ability, if you are prepared in a meeting, and if you've got data to back up why you're doing what you're doing, there's really no meeting you shouldn't take. And I have always been like that. Now, the paper may not agree. And you know what? I'm okay with that. When I got the endorsement from the Dallas Morning News, somebody said, be careful. And that's okay. When they have endorsed me, they haven't endorsed me. But anybody who believes that there's not a narrative that's in play is fooling yourself. I have been an elected official now, and I hate saying politician. I don't know why. I always say I'm an elected official. Since 2004, which means I've had 12 years of votes, of voting history, of working with the public, and being out there. And I think the past year was the first year that people started calling me all sorts of words. Oh, she's that crazy Tea Party chick. Oh, she's part of that fringe movement. How many in here are part of that fringe movement? There we go. It's not so fringe, is it? But if you look at my voting history, I got involved in politics because I built a park in my neighborhood. And when the time came to run against an elected official, a politician, I was going to support anybody who would run against him. Now, at that time, I was 32, 33. I had a 2 and a 5-year-old. I had a full-time job. And nobody would step up. Nobody wanted to put their name out there. Nobody wanted to lose. Nobody wanted to go through the campaign. I love campaigning. Okay? And that makes me weird. And I fully admit you have to have a little bit of a screw loose to want to run for public office. I will never push anybody in this room to run, but I will encourage you. And if you want it, you're doing it for the right reasons, you have the time, and you're dedicated, I will support you, and I don't care what gender you are, what race you are, what religion you are. If you're doing it for the right reasons, if you have the time and you're dedicated, I will support you. How hard is that to find? And it shouldn't be that hard. But when I ran back in 2004, it was only because I couldn't get anybody else to run, and I could not stomach the fact that we could have this guy as our city council member. And at the age of 33, never having been to a city council meeting, never having been on a board or a committee, I had a couple of people say, "Oh, you're so cute. Why don't you try, volunteering for the Parks Board? You're jumping too far ahead. You got to work your way up." And I went, "Oh, thank you. They're so nice." And I went ahead and I signed up. I volunteered. I immediately got my signatures. Getting 60 signatures is not very hard. I went down and I did the first thing that I could think of, and I was told by our CFO at that time that I was the first candidate to ever do this. I went down to go talk to the CFO and to get all of the copies of the last 5 years of budgets, and to go over the CFO to figure out where the money was being spent, what projects, and what the votes were. I did not think that was unique. That's what I did. Now, my background actually was in market research and communications, so it kind of made sense. I had gone to Cornell University. I had studied city and regional planning and government. So it did. Trust me, I never thought that I would run for elected office ever, but it worked out well. So when we started debating, first of all, I looked for my campaign manager, and I was told by 2 campaign managers that I interviewed that I needed to put my hair back in a bun because I looked too young. I needed to wear glasses, and I needed to get a shtick, like handing out cookies. You have to be the mom candidate. Exactly. Nobody wants somebody. You can smell insincerity a mile away. It's not. I was a mom, but I didn't have to act like a mom character. I mean, we're like 2-year-olds running around. I'm changing their diapers in a debate on my lap. You don't have to fake that. Needless to say, I did not have a campaign manager my first round. But what I did do is when I went to debates, I was prepared. I said about why I was running, what projects I wanted to get completed. And within a couple of weeks, that stone started spinning really fast and out of control. I won. I won my first by being outspent. It was either 6 or 8 times. My opponent outspent me 6 or 8 times. And back in 2004, by the way, that amount was about $20,000 I spent to his, how much would that be, 120? He spent about 120,000. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was 120,000, which is ridiculous. Fast forward that when I ran against the same guy 7 years later for mayor. You know how much it costs to run a campaign now? Not doing too much more. 200,000 is what I spent to his 1.6 million. And I won that election by 60% of the vote. I know, it's funny, isn't it? What it proves, though, is that it's not all about the money, as much as we might. Now, you're going to have some to run a campaign, but it's not all about the money. And I guess my point in going on this very long diatribe about the history is to say, I'm a normal person. I appreciate you comparing me to David, but nothing could be further from the truth. I am a mom. I have my family in Irving, and I love the city that I live in. I saw a problem that needed to be fixed, and I ran for election. I won. And just like every other time you're going to run for elected office, once you get there, the problem that you're looking at is gone, usually, by the time you get in office. And then you're left, like I was, staring at just to prove that we needed to change the sewer pipes, they brought in examples. Okay, how many in here have ever seen and held a used sewer pipe? Oh! I never thought I'd have that experience. So I look at what has happened in our city in the last 12 years. And you're right, it has been a point of controversy. I have fought against projects that I thought were spending ridiculous amounts of money on. I have a little bit of standards, and I think my city is a great city, and I don't want to lower my standards just because I like somebody. And it's kind of funny because when I first got elected, people that supported me to get in office may not have realized who they were supporting, but a lot of people think that because they support you, when their item comes up on an agenda, you're automatically going to support it. And I didn't. because much as I appreciate your support, that's not going to win, a vote. That friendship is not what I look at. It's what's going on with that project. And so we got some heated debates on city council. We had money, $40 million, that was going to be spent for a developer in downtown Irving. Nothing got developed. We spent another $80 million on an entertainment center where the only thing that we saw was pretty pictures. And that kind of stuff really makes you not want to be there, because when you're that close up and there's nothing you can do about it, you get frustrated. So why, after these, what I would consider normal votes, conservative votes, thoughtful votes, why after all that time was I all of a sudden labeled by the Dallas Morning News that came out and supported me? Why was I all of a sudden labeled this crazy woman? This, far right Tea Party lady? And the only answer that I can think of is that was a narrative that fit where they wanted to go. We had an issue that came out at the very end of January last year, so January 2015. There was an article in the paper, there's a news story that talked about the first Sharia law court in Irving, Texas. And they filmed it right in front of, they taped it right in front of the mosque. They interviewed two of the imams inside the mosque. And a day later, it's on the Chris Crock show. 30 minutes. They had, people calling in. So my phone starts lighting up. Because within 2 or 3 days, the narrative was not the first Sharia court in the U.S. is in Irving. It is Irving creates the first Sharia law court in the United States. Yeah, you see the difference? So as mayor, I took to, the only real direct idea that I have is through emails and Facebook posts. Now, before I did that, I looked at their website, and it's islamictribunal.org. So I went to the actual website, and I saw some things there that disturbed me. I mean, honestly, I read it. The imams were referring to themselves as attorneys. They were referring to themselves as judges. There was a thing in there, call this number, for legal services. There was a disclaimer on the bottom. Don't send us any confidential information until an attorney-client relationship has been formed. They were charging for their services. Under areas of law, areas of practice, it included divorce cases, product liability, business, and real estate litigation. And then when you started going to why they were doing it, there were things like, well, all Muslims, even in the United States, need to practice Islamic jurisprudence, or Sharia law. That disturbed me a little bit. And I will fully admit, I was not aware. If I close this computer, am I going to lose that? No, we're good.
Yeah.
Oh, is that okay? You all right with that? Yeah. So, I was a little concerned. And so I thought, I started talking to some of my state reps. So I talked to Matt Rinaldi and Rodney Anderson. And, I asked for their input on it. And there was a bill, it was called the American Laws for American Courts. And, so we started talking. But in between, I posted this Facebook post, and it's a little long, but I'll help you'll entertain me. I wrote, Sharia law court was not approved or enacted by the city of Irving. Recently, there have been rumors suggesting that the city of Irving has somehow condoned, approved, or enacted the implementation of a Sharia law court in our city. Let me be clear. Neither the city of Irving, our elected officials, or city staff have anything to do with the decision of the mosque that has been identified as starting a Sharia court. As mayor of the city of Irving, I took an oath to uphold the laws of the state of Texas and the Constitution of the United States. I respect the freedoms guaranteed under the First Amendment and believe that protecting fundamental constitutional rights and ensuring that individual rights are not violated or denied is essential. Currently, Texas Supreme Court precedent does not allow the application of foreign law that violates public policy, statutory, or federal laws. However, now that this issue has emerged in our community, I am working with our state representatives on legislation to clarify and strengthen existing prohibitions on the application of foreign law in violation of constitutional or statutory rights. American citizens need to remember that their rights are guaranteed by the Constitution, and I believe no one should subjugate themselves to anything less. While I'm working to better understand how this court, in quotes, will function and whom will be subject to its decisions, please know if it's determined that there are violations of basic fundamental rights occurring, I will not stand idle, and I will fight with every fiber of my being against this action. Our nation cannot be so overly sensitive in defending other cultures that we stop protecting our own. The American Constitution and our guaranteed rights reign supreme in our nation, and may that ever be the case. Anybody offended by any of that? You know how long it took me to write that? You know, and I did. It was edited a number of times because I wanted to make sure I was very clear about what the concern was, about what our actions would be, and about where I stood. Fact is, as an elected official, I took an oath. I'm not doing this because I want to get the publicity. Trust me, I did not want to get that publicity. I did it because as an elected official, you stand up there and you say you're going to uphold the laws of the Constitution and that of the state of Texas. And nobody should take that lightly. So seeing a situation where that might potentially be threatened, I stood up and said, that. And you would have thought that I was the biggest racist in the world, because the amount of condemnation that came down on my head from that statement was absolutely ridiculous.
You sound pro-American to me.
Goodness gracious. Thank you for saying that. What I found most interesting was so many times the Dallas Morning News, when they wrote about this, and it wasn't just the Dallas Morning News, I just can't pick on them, but they're the ones who started it, and then everybody else kind of copied exactly what they wrote. But it was, I attacked a group of moms. I attacked this, I attacked that. I called it, the mayor accused them of having a court. I was giving a speech several months ago, and in the front row, there was a woman, and not a full burqa, but she was in a hijab. And at the end of my speech, she had a book, a three-ring notebook, not too different than this. And she had it opened up, and I could tell that she had printed out pages from the Islamic Tribunal's website. And she had her question, and she said, Mayor Van Duyne, I'm here because I want to let you know that I was offended by your accusations. I don't think it was fair. I don't think it was a fair representation that you kept calling this a court when all this was a religious tribunal. Now, I don't know about you. I don't know about your churches. I don't know about your temples. But I'm Episcopal. If we talk about canon law, how many handle things like product liability? My priest is not the first one I'm going to go to when I think about real estate litigation. It's just not going to happen. But I looked at her and I said, so you really, that was the issue? And she said, yeah, you called it a court and it wasn't a court. Now, I have gone over this site many a time because I did not ever want it to be my words. It was not my interpretation. So I was very, very specific to use the words that they used themselves. Lucky for me, she had this page opened up. It was the first page of what they call our Constitution. So that's on their website, our Constitution. And I said, just for everybody in this room, you have a 3-ring notebook. This is printed out from the Islamic Tribunal website, right?
Yes, right.
And then I said, could you do me a favor? Could you read the first line? And so she looked at it and she said, the purpose of this court is to blah, blah, blah. And I went, stop, go back. And I said, can you do that one more time? And she goes, the purpose of this court, stop. Who's referring to it as a court?
They are.
You need to come up here. I want you right next to me. But, it's like this common sense kind of stuff. And you're like, are you kidding me? How many of you have read that in the Dallas Morning News? D Magazine. Throw it out there, right? Because I've been all over them. Anybody seen that? Those are facts. And what it does is it puts into context all of my public statements. But why wouldn't we want to talk about the context? Why wouldn't we want to be fair and balanced? Why are we so outwardly worried that we have to tiptoe around this political correctness? Anybody got an answer? I'm waiting.
White guilt.
White guilt? Do you feel guilty? You know,
You don't want to tip the apple cart.
they don't want to tip the apple cart.
Ultimately, there's a threat of violence behind it.
What?
There's a threat of violence behind it.
There's a threat of violence. And you know
All
what?
else fails.
Well, you know what? And that threat of violence, I felt directly. We had an incident, and y'all know about it, happened in September, right? Several months after this. September 16th, I woke up, it was a Wednesday morning, and I had work session. And I hate to admit it, but about usually 5 or 5:30 in the morning, the first thing I do is I reach for my phone. And I look at my emails, I look at, things people have posted. Sometimes I've had to, people post things to my Facebook that I really don't want on there, and you have to clean it up. And I do all my own media, by the way, all my own social media. I don't have staff members for that. But I'm reading, and I pulled it up, and it was like, whoa. I mean, tens of thousands of Facebook posts and Twitter posts, emails. It was horrible. First thing I did was turn on the news. Not only was it on the local news, but it was on national news. Then the first thing I do is go and I read the story. Now, I'll tell you, had I read this story as a third person, not having the experience from the previous year that I had, I might have read that story differently. And I'm going to give a lot of people around the world that read that story for the first time and thought, wow, what is that ISD? What is that police department thinking? But I knew better. So the first thing I did was I called our city manager, then I called our police chief. And I got a lot of information about what happened. I can tell you that the story was not clear. The story had misstatements in it, shocking. And the story was extraordinarily misleading, given the facts. Later that day, I had our work session, because, just because you're getting bad publicity does not mean that the inner workings of the city have to stop. So we went ahead and we had our work session. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, I was going to break from work session and go over and meet with the family of the student in question. I waited, and I waited, and I kept texting my chief, are they there yet? Are they there yet? And at about 3:30-ish, I got a text message from our director of communications going, no, they're giving a press conference on their front lawn. Now this, by the way, keep in mind, was after Hillary Clinton weighed in. This was after our President of the United States, Barack Obama, weighed in and said, nice clock, kid. Now, you know what was really funny about that? Is he said, nice clock, kid, 22 minutes before the city had ever released the picture of what it looked like. Why would the President of the United States weigh in on something that he knew absolutely nothing about?
That's what he does.
And I checked, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't saying that. I checked. Did anybody get a phone call from anybody in D.C., period? No. We had gotten, a couple of weeks after this happened, there was a group of Democrat congressmen, including one that represents my city, that insisted that the DOJ investigate the city of Irving for potential violations of civil rights. Now, this particular congressman has my cell phone number. No call. And as far as I'm concerned, he's labeling his own police department. I mean, he represents us. Not even a phone call. People were so quick to jump to judgment. Now, truth be told, I was not in that room, but everything that I heard made sense. That night, I had a meeting with Michael Morris, who were trying to work out some funding for transportation issues in Irving. Nice. So we had somewhat of a long day. Council work session ends, and I go to meet with Michael. And I looked down at my phone as I'm walking into the meeting, and my daughter, who was 16 at the time, said, "Mom, I'm looking at these Facebook posts, and I want to cry." She said, "How can people that talk about love write such hateful things?" And I looked at Michael and I said, "I'm sorry, I got to go home." Now, to his credit, he had no idea what was going on, hadn't picked up the paper, hadn't seen anything, did not know why I was so upset. That was the hardest part of my job, is trying to explain to a 16-year-old, whose closest friends, by the way, she goes to an international school, to say the least, whose closest friends are Jewish, Hindus, Muslims, and she's hearing her mom being called everything under the sun. Since that time, I've had to get security at my own expense. It's not right that the city has to pay for it. We had a vote for American laws for American courts that, in a nutshell, said that only in family court, so issues of child custody, issues of divorce, marital dispersions of assets, only in family courts, where that foreign law would not be enforced when that foreign law violates fundamental human rights, as provided by the Constitution of Texas and the Constitution of the United States. Anybody against that? Anybody? We put this on the agenda. We put this on the agenda, really expecting that this was not going to be, a controversial issue, really. Because what had happened is, after my Facebook post, I had gotten a visit from members of the mosque that wanted me to recant my statement. And I asked them, which part didn't you like? What part would you suggest I recant? They didn't like the tone. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't think that what I wrote was offensive, and I would really hope that what I wrote you support. In fact, the law that we're talking about, putting in and supporting the legislation at the state level, we'd really like you to support. They asked what it was. We told them we'd get them a copy, and before we ever put it on the agenda, we were hoping to get their feedback. 3 weeks went by, never heard from them. Literally the night before, it was about 8:30 at night, the night before I'm trying to think if I have any copies of it, we started getting emails. And they were all kind of the same email, that we were racist, we were bigoted, we were hateful, because we were going to pass this law that was against Islam. Now, there was no mention of religion. There was no mention even of Sharia law. What we were saying, and what we really hoped they would come down, because they were concerned that Facebook posts and some of the information that was going out was going to create confusion about what this court did. So we said, this provides you an opportunity to come down and stand with us and say what you support, which is basic fundamental rights as provided by the law. Come down and stand with us. And said, we had about 300 members of the mosque that came down to protest our support of the Constitution, because they viewed that legislation as offensive. And as a result, we were again called everything under the book. And at some point in time, you're like, okay, what do labels really do? Okay, they're funny, I guess, to say you tried to make a point, but what they really do is they stop the conversation. Because the person whose label is all of a sudden dismissed, anything that comes out of your mouth now we're not going to listen to because you're a racist, right? You're dismissed. But it also stops the conversation. Now think about what even having that on the agenda could have done. What I was most concerned is that you have, under Sharia law, for example, you have women whose testimony is equal to 50% that of a man. Now, is that equal protection under the law? You have women who are not allowed to represent themselves or to decide if they want to get a divorce. They have to ask permission. And then they have to have the imam represent them. Is that equal protection under the law? And do you know who I really thought would be supportive and get behind me? You know who I got the most grief from? And I'm thinking, you guys come down here and you fight for things that I don't even necessarily believe are happening. But this, even if it's a possibility, why would you support it? I never got an answer. Never got an answer. And then I heard, well, you know what? If they want to subjugate themselves to this type of behavior, that's, we have to let them. Culturally, they're allowed to do that. We have to let them. Okay, so let's substitute domestic violence in that situation. Same people. Okay, well, you know what? She wants to get beat by her husband. That's a decision she can make. We can't help her. How would that go over? And yet, this is the narrative. And for some reason, we all see in this room the hypocrisy of it. But trying to actually get that in the paper, trying to actually get people, especially elected officials, to say that is how difficult. Look what's going on right now in the presidential elections. Okay, you can hate Trump. You can think he is a disgrace. I'm not advocating either way. My guy got out early on. I was kind of bummed. I like Skywalker, but anyway, you look at some of the statements that have been made, and for the vast majority of people, now that the media is not the one who's defining the narrative, right? You got a candidate who they're giving all of the power, but it's his words. What's the response to that? It's a little visceral. No doubt. And people can say it's hate and it causes violence. But at least there's a conversation that's happening now. I'm a lot more hopeful this time this year than I was this time last year. When you take an oath, you have to take it seriously. As an elected official, you have to hold us accountable. What I found amazing was we had 9 members of our city council. Do you know what that vote was to protect constitutional laws that we all took an oath to do? You know what that vote was? 5-4. It's a 5-4 vote. We had 4 members of that city council who said they did not want to offend anyone in our city. It was a 5-4 vote. And by the way, an election has happened between then and now. If we were to have that vote today, we would lose. So when we think about how important elections are, one vote really does mean a huge amount. It's also interesting that we had 5 members of that city council that voted for that bill, including a board-certified family attorney. And yet, who has gotten all of the credit and blame for that? Why? And I guess I'm somewhat of an easy target. I'm fairly direct. You ask me a question, I may disagree with you. Even if I know your position, I'm still going to be consistent. And so it makes me a little bit of a easy target. But I have had 2 options, and maybe it's because I did have, or do have a 17-year-old daughter. I was going to say a 16-year-old daughter at the time. But I've got a 16-year-old daughter. I had a 16-year-old daughter. She's 17, and I have a 14-year-old son. And maybe because I look at them, there's no way that once you make a statement based on your values and your morals, that you should go back on it because you're somehow upset by labels that people call you. If you cannot stand in an elected capacity and do what you know is right, do what the people who put you there in office demand of you, then you have no business running and you need to step down.
Amen.
Amen.
So while I appreciate everybody and the very kind words and some of the really nice words that I have received, I am no hero. I am simply mayor of a city that I adore.
I think you're a star.
But if everybody did what they were supposed to do, I would fall in. I would be the beige. And we need to make sure that we are holding not only them accountable, but we are holding a higher level of expectations. And not just for our elected officials, but for ourselves. Anybody in this room can run for office. Everybody in this room at some point in time should have run for office. There's never a good time. I did not think having a child in diapers was a good time to run. But I'll tell you, after this last year, I call my kids native speakers because they grew up seeing all of the, excuse me, but crap that was thrown at me in the paper, and they didn't think anything different. This was a little bit nastier, and it was, from people like the New York Times and LA Times, and I think even like Australia and England. Anyway, you get my point. They didn't think anything of it. So it was, in some ways, it was a burden at the time. You missed a lot of T-ball games, but in hindsight, it was actually a good thing. But I encourage everybody not just to vote. Everybody in this room votes. Not just to get people out into campaign. But if you really want to help, run for office. Bring those values that you hold so dear and waste the time campaigning. Spend the time to get in that position so that you can help, that you can see the people that are doing the right things firsthand, and you're there not just supportive with emails, though that is really important, but you're also there to help them on votes. Ken, you had mentioned that people, especially those who are doing the right thing and trying to do the right thing, don't always know that they've got support. This last year was really weird. It was really hard. But between all of the emails and the Facebook posts, and when I would go out in public and people would come up to me and thank me, that meant the world. It really did mean a tremendous amount. So taking the time and writing your elected officials that are doing the right things is a good thing. And you know what else I really loved? Was seeing articles in the Dallas Morning News and then going down and reading the comments. We're like, okay, what is up with this rag? Why are you picking it? Didn't you know this? Those things help too. Because the editors start looking at that and they start paying attention to it. I don't know how we can turn. I don't have the answer. I don't know how we can turn this thing around. But I know that everybody is in a position for a reason. And you can either choose to ignore it and take the easy way out, or do what you know is best. For my city, for my mother, and for my kids, I'm going to continue to stand up and do what I think is right, because that is the minimum that we should expect. I love Texas. I love the United States, and I think we live in the most excellent country. We have our problems, but we live in the most excellent country available around. And if we don't continue to fight for it, we're not going to have it. I will pledge to you that I will continue to fight for it. Thank you for your time. Time for questions you want to ask? You have me, I have turned down numerous media requests, but I am in front of you here. Anything you want to ask me, if I can answer, I will. Yeah.
I was confused when I first saw the article about this to begin with. In terms of needing the legislation, my understanding is that Texas Constitution and the U.S. Constitution supersede all other law by definition. And if any of the law challenges that law, by definition, the Attorney General of the U.S. and the Attorney General of the individual state are required by law to confront that law directly. Is that not true?
No, it's not true.
I guess I'm shocked. I don't understand. What is the standard?
So
that is completely, and of course, then that doesn't even count the Texas Bar Association and the U.S. Bar Association, people claiming to be lawyers that are not
lawyers.
Yeah, that's also a violation of law. That's fraud, right?
That's what you think. But as far as I know, there's been no investigation. So, but that's the assumption that people make. But by the way, the reason why ALAC was specific to family law is in things like contract law. It's whatever the law was that it was entered into. And I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to practice one, being one. I'm not going to pretend to be one. But my understanding is that if you enter into a contract, if it was based on Sharia law, that is the expectation. And those standards can be held in international business. It happens all the time. There's international laws that will reign. This was specific to family law because that is a much different animal. When you're in the United States, women have equal rights. And there were a number of cases that were brought up. Matt Rinaldi had sent me some. And again, this is what I research. I'm not necessarily an overly emotional person. Some people have claimed I'm a robot because, I need to have my data in order to support something. But there were a number of different cases, case law examples, where, a husband had said, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, and he considered themselves divorced. There was a case in New Jersey where a woman was actually beat and raped by her husband, and she wanted to get a restraining order. When she went to trial court, the judge denied it by saying he has no mens rea. In this case, he doesn't know that he's committing a crime. Because in his understanding, under your marriage, you were married, I don't remember what country they were married in, but under Sharia law, he's able to do that.
Because it came from a different country.
Correct.
So you're saying that the case laws that or the cases you were presented with were associated with people who were married outside of the country?
Perhaps.
Okay.
Or they were
What about
saying,
the property issue.
or they were saying that they were married here, but they were married with this understanding.
Okay.
And so, taking those things into account. Now, that woman did appeal it, and it was turned over in appeal. However, a lot of women may not know that they can appeal it. They might not have the resources to appeal it. And unless it's in an appeal, you would never even hear about it.
Right.
So those are examples. And there were other, there was several examples that I was given. 2 of them were in Texas. And there's actually a third going on in Austin right now. That shockingly, and my mom, by the way, happens to be a board-certified family attorney as well. And there are examples of that expectation. And you as an attorney can turn those cases down, which she has. But if they're asking her, it is happening in other courts around Texas. Yeah.
Is Irving a sanctuary city?
No. In fact, the case that where did Kurt already leave? Lonnie was talking about. The city of Irving actually created our 24/7 criminal alien program, which we were the first ones in the country to start working directly with ICE. That if people got pulled over and they were not able to show ID, that we would immediately refer them to ICE. Now, Obama several years ago drastically cut down the resources to that program, and it has not been nearly as effective. But no, we are definitely not a sanctuary city. Yeah.
Yeah. About running for office. Now, we know that there's usually a deadline for announcing, but I understand that there's a whole process that's hidden behind the scenes that you have to start, like how long ahead of even announcing do you have to get started on running for anything now?
That's a good question. Local is a lot different. You don't have nearly the budget that you have, for a presidential election, right? Where you're starting literally years, sometimes decades, planting the seeds. You look at a school board election, you look at a city council election. Our elections are in May. There were people who were still, when I ran for mayor, now I'd already been on city council, so I already had some name ID, but I had made the announcement in March that I was running for a May election. People thought that was a strategy, that I was somehow not wanting to put myself out early. And I, to be very honest, I did it because I was seeing who else would sign up. I knew that if I signed up, that would scare people away from running, and I wanted to see who would sign up because I really didn't want to run. I knew what a beatdown it was. I knew what the council was like, and it was not a group I wanted to work with. When I got elected, 7 of my council members hated me. It wasn't even close, right? You've been to, you guys were at some of these, it was like literal. If they could have, they would have. And, but I ran anyway, and so that wasn't a whole lot of lead up time. Yeah.
Well, let's take the case that you are a fundamentalist Mormon running a ranch in West Texas, and you've got a bunch of sister wives and numerous children that you're said to be abusing, and you get convicted and sent to the Texas penitentiary. How are you any different from the imams in Irving? both communities are running their situation according to their internal
Okay, I'm
law.
sorry. It took me a while to catch up to you. I'm like, where are you going with that? I don't know. It is a fair question, but I'm not going to pretend I know the answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wanna go?
The battle that you're fighting will never end. And my question to you is, do you see any light at the end of the tunnel that indicates that America might return to its traditional values?
I see people right now fighting to try to get non-traditional people elected. I think it's a great start. Do I think it's going to happen with this election? Absolutely not. But I'm really hoping that in the wake up, and I don't know anybody, I'm not going to ask anybody if who they supported in the '92 election. But that kind of spur of energy when you had Ross Perot run, that died, it went away. And again, I don't know if you supported him or not, but the idea that at least had people questioning the general malaise that happens when you get into elected position. I feel like I'm a little bit unusual because the fire that was in my belly when I ran 12 years ago has only increased. I mean, I have energy. I've got a lot more experience, and I can immediately identify BS when I see it, and I'll call the staff out. And I'm like, enough, okay, stop it. But, getting people to do that, because everybody at some point in time wants to be liked. You don't want to be the jerk. You don't want to be that person. And for a woman, and I'm not going to fall back on this because I have never done that, but for a woman it's a little bit different, right? Women are emotional. Men are passionate. Men are assertive. Women are aggressive. It's like it's a double-edged sword. And at the end of the day, I'm going to offend somebody because I'm going to swear right now, but I was 3, and I was from New York, but my aunt lived in Garland. And we flew down on American Airlines, and in the airport, I bent down. There's a cute little dog, and I went to pet the dog, and the dog bit me. And my mom came running over, and this guy was yelling at me. He was screaming at me, and my mom, she started yelling at the guy. And so when we started walking away, and the guy goes, "God, bitch." And my mom turned around, and without missing a beat, she goes, "And I bite like one too." So I'm telling you, man, I am the little acorn, and she's the mighty oak. And and that's how I was brought up. So you can call me whatever you want. It's not going to change my mind. We need more people to do that, and not to be offensive when you do it. I mean, still have grace, still be professional. But you can't just let bad actions continue because you want to be nice. When we elect people, I would love to be able to elect somebody who's nice but tough. But at the end of the day, realizing that you are throwing them in a ring. I want the fighter. I don't want the person who's going to go, "Okay, well, we can't punch. No, okay, let's just tap hands."
That's right.
I want somebody who's going to get in there and fight for me. You may not like them. And that's okay. But you know that they have your best interest at heart and they're willing to go for the battle.
I'd like to call you governor.
We'll see. I think we've got time for 2 more questions. Your hand up? Yeah. And then
Yes. Do you have many lawyers that support you in Irving, or many practicing attorneys that support your position on this real offer?
You know what's really funny, and again, one of my city council members is a board certified family attorney. My mom's a board certified family attorney, is very involved in the family law division. And they fought it. They told us that it was a nonsensical law that didn't need to be passed. So we have had many attorneys who have supported it, who've actually seen cases like that firsthand. But no, we have not gotten overall support at all.
No attorneys.
Of attorneys.
Are they all?
Not only had they not supported it, but it was the Family Law Association's lobbyist that killed the bill in Austin.
What is that House Bill 529?
No, it's 562.
Okay, is it going to come up again?
Oh, I am sure it's going to come up again. I am sure it's going to come up again. So if you support that, you need to let your state representatives know.
Well, American Bar Association makes a big deal about big firms doing pro bono work. There are a lot of international huge law firms that have offices in Dallas. A few years ago, and these are supposedly pro bono for people that can't afford it or for the public good. A few years ago, the University of Texas was taking an absurd position on entry, and a big firm from Houston who has an office here bragged about all the pro bono time they gave to the University of Texas, who doesn't want for money to hire anybody in the legal community. I would wonder if whether you can find lawyers or not, to get enough people to research what the policy is of the American Bar Association, and then put public pressure on law firms and the bar in general to get off their freaking butts and provide some legal services.
So I can tell you, between the two teenagers running the city and trying to hold enough money and and consulting to pay for my mortgage, I don't have time for that. But anybody who wants to do that, I am welcome to give you as much support as I can offer. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a very good idea. I have not seen anybody step up and help me on that. One more question? Yeah.
First of all, thank you.
Thank you.
Acted so honorably in a very difficult situation. Are there other cities in Texas experiencing what Irving has had to deal with? Do you know?
I have mentioned a couple of times in public settings that one of the things that disturbed me the most about the paper's description of my attack on this peaceful religious tribunal was the word attack. And you look at what happened in Paris, you look at what happened in Brussels, you look at what happened in San Bernardino, you look at what happened in Boston, you look at what happened in Garland. Those were attacks. I don't know if what we did in our city made a difference. I would like to think that it did. The tribunal, and I'm sure there are others, if it is purely religious in nature, and it is purely giving, soul-searching advice, I, God forbid, I am not going to get involved between somebody and their God, right? But if we're talking about an attorney-client privilege and that's not made public and simply gone to county court when you've got two signed signatures, I don't know if it's happening in other, but I would tell you right now, I've got enough case law that shows that it's happening in other jurisdictions. And I would be really supportive of other cities passing resolutions that would support this state legislation getting passed. So if you don't live in the city of Irving, well, even if you do live in the city of Irving, support it. And I am hopeful that it passes this year. I don't know what will happen. I'm hopeful. But without a doubt, we have other cities that are being affected in this way.
What was that bill number?
It was bill number 562. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's ALAC. It's the ALAC bill, American Laws for American Courts. Thank you so much for your attention.